Okay guys, in this video we're going to look at the interest range input example from class 24. So you can find this file, VBA Day 2 Examples, on Blackboard under class 24. You'll see that there are several different examples that we're going to be working through in class. So this video is just going to show you one of those examples, this first tab. So let's take a look at what we have first before jumping into the Visual Basic. We have the flowchart that we've been using for compound interest. So we take in the input of the deposit, the rate, and the years, and then we calculate the balance using the formula given in the process box, and then we return the balance to the user by printing it out at the end. So what we want to do is, in this example, be able to use the Excel sheet that a person can type in a deposit, a rate, and a number of years, and then by clicking the calculate shape here, which is we're going to treat as a button, that then the balance can appear. So we want it to be able to put inputs here and then hit the button to run the process and get a balance output. So just a quick example to see how you can use a sheet to do that. So what we're going to do, you can do Alt F11 to open up the VBA console, or you can go to the Developer tab on Windows and go to Visual Basic. On Mac, it's under Tools at the top, and you'll have to open up the macro menu. So you may have to take a look at which window you have open. So if you're looking at the navigation pane on the left, basically you'll see all the different things available to you. Make sure that you're under the actual file name that you're using. So this one's VBA Day 2 Examples. And then what we're going to do is, instead of attaching them to the individual sheet, we're going to select this workbook. So double click on this workbook, and you'll see that the subnames are already populated for you. So basically we're going to make all these different subs, these subroutines, like I said in class, and then be able to attach them to buttons if we want, or just run them separately. So for right now, let's go ahead and focus on the interest range sub at the top. I like to space things down a little bit so I can have a little more white space and see what I'm doing. So in class, we've talked about that the first thing you want to do is, when you're looking at a flowchart, is to look at the legend and the variables that you have, and then declare those variables. So in this variable legend, we have deposit, rate, years, and balance. So what we're going to do is first declare variables, and then kind of work along the flow of the flowchart. So to declare a variable in VBA, we use dim, capital DIM, and then we state the variable name. So for deposit, we're going to use D, so dim D, and then we're going to, because it says option explicit at the top, and in general it's just good practice, we're going to specify the variable type. So D is for deposit, which is a currency variable. So we're going to say dim D as, that's the keyword, currency. You'll notice that it's giving me a hint or asking me if that's what I want. That is what I want. So dim D as currency. Also notice that when I use the what are called reserved words, so words that are reserved by VBA, that they turn blue. And the variable name that we chose, the D, is black. So that means that that is not a reserved word. Okay, so we've got D as currency. Let's go ahead and fill out the rest of these. So dim, we're going to declare R for rate. And rate is, it could be something like 0.02 if you have 2%, 0.03, 3%. So in this case, we talked a little bit about the different variable types in class. We're going to use something called single. So dim R as single. This gives you some degree of basically of a decimal type variable. So out to a specific number of places that we talked about in class. So we're going to use single for that. Next we have years. So dim n as. Now for years, we're probably just going to look at like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just, kind of whole numbers that are positive. Or for us, we can use the integer variable type. So just numbers that don't have, fractions or decimals, parts like that. So we've got a currency, a single, an integer. And then finally, the balance, we're going to do dim b as, and you might be thinking the balance is also going to be money, so we also want that to be currency. Okay, so now we have declared our 4 variables, and we are ready to actually start processing. So right now we've taken care of just setting up the empty space for the variables. Notice we haven't actually given them any values yet. Okay, all we've done is sort of put up the containers for each of these things. What we need to do now is we need to get it so that if somebody puts a value in here, I'm going to drag this over, that if somebody puts a value in here for the deposit, the rate, and the years, that it will actually show up, get processed by VBA. So in order to do that, we talked about accessing the sheet using something called range. So what we're going to do is, for each of the variables, so for example for D, we're going to say D deposit equals, and then we're going to use range, and then in parentheses we're going to put the cell of interest. So the deposit's going to go in B2, this blank cell here. So we have D equals range, and then in quotes, B2 dot value. Okay, so we're going to indicate that we want the value that is in cell B2 to get stored in the variable, the currency variable D. Okay, now let's follow up with the rate and the years. So we're going to say rate R equals range, and we're going to take the value that's in B3 here and put that in there. So range B3 dot value. And then finally N, so years equals range, it's the one right below it, B4 dot value. Okay, so we've talked about input, processing, output. Here we're setting up all our inputs. So we set up the variables. Now we are making it so that each one gets a value from the Excel worksheet. So we've now completed this parallelogram. All right, so now we can, because we have our inputs, we can move on to the next step. We can now do our process. So all we're going to do is use the formula as it's written. So we'll say B for balance is equal to D times the quantity 1 plus R to the power of N. Okay, so I'm just using the formula that's provided, and notice that because I've put values from the sheet in each of these variables, that those are what will get processed. Okay, so now we've done the process that's in the rectangle, and now our last step is to print the balance. So in this case, we want the balance to appear in cell B6. So you might think, well, all right, let's do b equals range, something like that. But really what we want is we want to start by saying the range, we want the range to be equal to what's in the variable b. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the opposite of what's here. We'll have a range of b6 dot value is equal to b. Okay, and I just went ahead and I hit Control S to save, or you could do Command S to save. So I've declared the variables in the legend, I've taken inputs, I've calculated the balance, and then I've sent the balance out to the sheet in cell B6. So if I run this using the run sub button from here, notice that nothing happens in here. We get a balance of 0. Okay, and that's because there's nothing here. So if I want to test it out with values, I can say, let's say, a deposit of 1,000, a rate of 0.02, and let's say for 2 years. So after I put those values in, nothing's going to happen until I hit the run sub button again. So go ahead and hit the run sub button, and you'll see that the formula runs and the balance of $1,040.40 appears. Okay, so pretty cool. The last thing we want to do though is connect it to this button. So this is perfectly fine. I mean, you can run it from here, but if you have a user, they probably won't want to actually look at the VBA and kind of run it from this dialog. So what we can do is right click on the shape. So right click on the shape that we've made that says calculate, and there's an option that says assign macro. So we'll go ahead and choose that, assign macro. You'll see that it brings up all of the macros available, and this one is called interest range. So we're going to select interest range and then hit OK. And then what you need to do is click somewhere else first, and then you'll see that if you hover over the button, now it's a button, that you get the little hand cursor. So let's, for example, let's change this to 3 years, and then we'll click the button, and you'll see that it actually changes the value. Okay, so we've now successfully run through the whole flowchart to calculate compound interest, and then we connected it to, we assigned the macro to a shape.